There's a long storied history of foreign objects winding up inside of the human bladder, somehow. I've covered such stories in the past, like the boy from the UK who got the entirety of a USB charging cable stuck inside of himself, or the woman who had an entire glass tumbler inside of her for 4 years. How'd they get in there? It's a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, Doc. Well, now I've got some stories to which I feel these pale in comparison. Multiple cases from around the world of fish winding up inside of a human bladder, both living and dead. I know what you might be thinking now, and a lot of people have asked me to cover them, but I'm not actually talking about the parasitic catfish from the Amazon. Although the human bladder might be a better fate than those shitty little fish bowls that they stick goldfish in, these fish likely did not choose this fate. For today's video, let's take a look at some fish that mysteriously wound up inside of a human bladder. This video is sponsored by MyHeritage. MyHeritage is a leading global family history and DNA service, and it makes exploring your family history easier than ever. So at a glance, nobody's really quite sure what's going on with me. If you follow me enough, you got some passing knowledge that I'm part Korean and part German, but I don't really know how the breakdown is. And the MyHeritage DNA kit is just $29 for a limited time. The MyHeritage DNA test has you do a quick cheek swab, then you send it off, and MyHeritage has the full breakdown for you. So let's take a look at what I got. Chinese? There's no way Chinese. Get out of here. That fucking song though. A little bit of Central Asia is like that Borat stuff. That's probably like everyone got a little bit of that. Alright, the Germanic we were expecting. French. And all the rest. 11 more ethnicities. Alright, so apparently the deal with that Chinese. Apparently MyHeritage has divided the Korean ethnicity between Chinese and Japanese, and I guess my part is the Chinesier part, which I guess that makes sense considering how I act. The German I was expecting, but I knew there was gonna be some other kinds of white mixed in there, but the French was out of left field. I gotta tell Frenchie when I see him next. Also, I got, in the further breakdown, I got Breton, which I thought that was a thing just from the Elder Scrolls. I didn't know it was a real thing, but I guess I got it. In addition to the ethnicity tools, MyHeritage also has Ancient Origins, which traces you back 10,000 years. This includes ancient populations like Imperial Romans, Norse Vikings, Phoenicians, and Ancient Egyptians. And the DNA Matches feature can show you some potentially missing relatives that you didn't know about. And I know this is a concern with any of this kind of service. In its privacy policy, which is legally binding, MyHeritage commits to never sell or license genetic data. MyHeritage has just launched a special limited time offer. The DNA kit is now available at $29, 29 euros or 29 pounds depending on your region, the lowest price on the market worldwide. Click the link in the description box or scan the QR code. So before I get into the stories about fish winding up inside of human bladders, let me address the elephant in the room, that being the candiru, also known as the vampire fish, the toothpick fish, and sometimes the penis fish, Vendelia cirosa. The candiru is typically found along the Amazon River basin in South America. The fish typically attaches itself to the gills of larger fish and drinks their blood. There, it fills up with blood and leaves once it's satisfied. And since the 19th century, it's been said that this inch-long fish is attracted to human urine. It's said to lure the fish, which will then swim up your pee hole and eject spines that lodge itself inside your penis. Not only is this extremely painful, but it makes it very difficult to remove. Other accounts of these fish say that they'll eat their way through the lining of your penis and lay eggs inside of you. It may sound like a bit of an urban legend, perhaps to scare off the gringos, especially since the earliest known write-ups were by German biologists recounting warnings from indigenous people. And it actually seemed like reports of this fish ceased in 1891. That was until 1997, when a urologist working in Brazil named Anwar Samad reported that he himself removed a candiru from a man. It had reportedly gotten lodged inside of his urethra after it jumped out of the water and swam up his dick. The patient presented pale with an infection, penile bleeding, and the inability to urinate. It had also seemingly tried to penetrate his scrotum before dying inside of him. After deciding not to extract the fish through the perineum, which is the science word for your taint, the doctor would pull it out the way it got in, using urethral washes and endoscopic equipment. And after a year, he reported there were no lasting effects following the successful procedure. Dr. Samad's report would bring this fish back into the mainstream consciousness. However, despite this report, there's still a lot of controversy over whether or not the candiru actually is the penis fish. Critics noted that the doctor's report of the fish jumping out of the water is inconsistent with the fish's observed behavior, and a study in 2001 demonstrated that the fish actually does not care about urine at all. According to their observations, the fish seems to hunt by sight rather than being attracted to any particular chemical. Furthermore, Samad's report is literally the only modern known case of this happening. Although clearly this is something that can happen, a biologist named Steven Spott compared the odds of this happening to you, even if you're actively pissing in the Amazon, to getting struck by lightning while simultaneously being eaten by a shark. Of course, that being said, anything that can go up a dick has been up a dick, and at times even made its way as far as into the bladder. I was looking into one particular story I remembered about a fish winding up in someone's bladder, and I found that this has happened a lot. So you might be familiar with something called a fish pedicure. First popularized where else but China. You dunk your foot inside a tank of little fish, typically a species of carp called Gararufa, or doctor fish. The fish happily eat away at the calluses and dead skin, giving you nice smooth feet. This would become a global trend before ultimately being banned in certain places due to health concerns. In particular, damage to nail beds and sometimes the outright removal of toenails, and the risk of infection when fish draw blood. Some have even raised concerns of hepatitis or HIV transmission. Also, it's considered somewhat inhumane, as these fish are only willing to eat foot skin in the absence of the things it would rather eat, like plankton. But this doesn't stop true believers from engaging in the practice. And of course, your feet aren't the only place where you might want nice soft skin. You can even get a full body fish cleanse. But on at least one occasion, this has gone very, very wrong. Let me tell you about a story from 2011. A 56-year-old Chinese man named Zhang Nan was enjoying such a procedure in hopes that it would help him look 10 years younger. This one was a bit different, employing eels rather than doctor fish. So during the procedure, Zhang is relaxing in the bath as the eels feast on the dead skin all over his body. Then suddenly it stops being relaxing as he feels a sharp pain in his crotch. One of the eels had gotten lodged inside of his urethra. In a panic, he manages to get a hold of the eel's tail, but he finds that it's just too slippery to get a good grip on. Thus, the fish works its way inside of his penis and all the way up into his bladder. After a 3-hour procedure, the surgeons managed to remove the animal, with one of them noting to the press that the slippery nature of the eel made it very easy to go all the way inside of him like that. Despite this horrifying story, 2 years later, Western outlets would start reporting on how eel exfoliation treatments are the hot new trend that you just gotta try. In another report in 2011, urologists looked at various cases of foreign bodies in the urinary bladder. The report was written with the intent of sharing best practices for removing these kinds of bodies, because patients often wait until the last minute to say, hey, I stuck something up my dick, and then the urologists find themselves in a race against the clock. Cases in the report include a woman who was pleasuring herself with a safety pin, and then the whole pin got inside of her and worked its way into the bladder. And then there was another case with a 23-year-old man who was using an electric wire and lost it inside of himself. Of note for this video, though, was the case of a 16-year-old boy who had gotten a leech inside of his bladder. He arrived to the hospital complaining of abdominal pain, and he presented with what the report describes as profuse hematuria, aka pissing a lot of blood. Upon their investigation, they found that his bladder was full of blood clots, and then they discovered a big fat swollen leech. It had reportedly entered his body when he was submerged in a rice paddy. And incidents involving leeches and rice paddies are pretty common, so much so that agriculture groups have published material on how to best protect yourself from them. But a leech swimming up your dick and getting in your bladder, it's not as common, but I guess it's not entirely unheard of. In fact, a paper published a few years prior to this reported 43 separate cases of leeches getting inside of people's bladders. And it puts forth a method that appears to be the best practice for removing a leech from a human bladder. The patients are given a Foley catheter that's flushed with saline and then clamped for 3 or more hours. Now, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a doctor, I'm just a guy who reads stuff online, so I may be misunderstanding this, but as I understand it, after the time is up, you release the pressure, and then the leech shoots out of your dick. Dead or alive, as they noted. In the case of the rice paddy boy, though, the leech launch failed. Perhaps because this leech was larger than average, or maybe because there were so many blood clots, so they just had to cut him open and take it out. And then finally we get the story that, very, very amusingly, to me at least, probably not the boy, was published in a British outlet called Practical Fish Keeping. I guess to show you what's practical, they also gotta show you what's not practical. The article tells the tale of a 14-year-old boy from India who got a 2-centimeter long fish stuck in his bladder. He arrives to the hospital complaining about abdominal pains, and aside from some piss driblets, has not been able to urinate for 24 hours. In a report published by the doctors, they note that after questioning, he said that while cleaning his fish tank, he was holding one of his fish, and when he was holding the fish, he realized that he really had to pee. So he went to the bathroom while still holding the fish. And then, while he was peeing, the fish somehow slipped out of his hand and got lodged into his pee hole. It was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, Doc. In the intro to their report, they note that a great variety of foreign bodies have been removed from the lower urinary tract and male external genitalia, and most patients were too ashamed to admit they had inserted or applied any object and usually presented when a complication had occurred from a foreign body. They also did note, though, that mentally he was sound, and clinically he was absolutely a normal person with no previous history of any psychiatric illness. They also say that his urethral meatus appeared normal. I have no idea what a urethral meatus is, and now I have to find out what it is because meatus is a great word. Alright, apparently it's just the word for the opening. I thought it was gonna be like, you know how the skin's a little different at like the exact pee hole part? It's just got like that little, I don't know how you describe it, like, you ever bevel and emboss something in Photoshop? It's like the pee hole got the little bevel, it got the little bevel and emboss. Yes, I thought the bevel and emboss thing on your dick was the fucking meatus, but I guess the meatus is just the whole hole. Anyway, they find this fish dead inside this kid's bladder, and they don't even bother trying the catheter bazooka trick. They just cut him right open. Try to remove it with forceps, but the fish it really is a slippery fucker. The kid might have been lying about some things, but he wasn't lying about how slippery that guy was. So they wound up getting this thing called a stone grasper, which I believe is this thing that looks like one of those head massagers, and they got it out. Surprisingly, as with almost all of these cases, the boy had no lasting damage from the incident. So I guess you shouldn't stick a fish up your dick, but there's worse things you could stick up your dick. Well, please don't interpret that as me saying that you should stick a fish up your pee hole. Anyway, that's all for now. If you like this video, turn on notifications and check out my video on real-life body horror stories. And once again, don't forget to check out my sponsors at MyHeritage. Just click the link in the description and use code WANG.